Jai Hind. Today we are going to discuss the computer memory. It is under programming for problem solving, and the subject code for this is KCS 101T in first semester and 201T in second semester. I am Dr. Aditya Pratap Singh, Associate Professor, IT Department. So let's discuss the computer memory. It's a very elementary topic for first year students. So if we talk about the abstract diagram for the computer system or a digital computer, the John von Neumann was said to be the father of computers, and he has given a model for the digital computers. So the digital computers basically have some kind of input, processing, and then output. So we have certain input devices. We have certain input devices. We have some output devices, and for processing part we have control unit, arithmetic logical unit, and some registers inbuilt in the processor. For holding the data and the instructions, we have certain amount of memory, like some main memory and secondary memory. So when we refer to memory, then generally we talk about the primary memory, and in case of storage, whenever we say that storage refers to the secondary memory. So we will discuss what is primary and what is secondary, why primary is being called primary. So memory, the main job of memory to hold the data and instruction which are going to be executed. Instructions are required by the computer system to perform a task, and to perform or process those instructions we may require some kind of data. So we need a storage facility available within the computer where the data and instructions can be stored. So we will discuss today about this computer memory. The memory, the main purpose of memory is data storage. It is also storing the instructions, and these instructions are used to perform a particular task. They will be executed by the system and data will be used. So to store these data and instructions, there are basically two types of memory being used in computer system. One is primary memory. And another is secondary memory. The primary memory is the memory which holds instructions and data during processing, and it is directly accessible to the central processing unit. The processor of a computer system can directly communicate with the primary memory only. That's why we call this memory as primary memory. The secondary memory, which is used generally to provide the permanent long-term storage, and it is being called secondary because it refers to the inability of the CPU to communicate it directly. So the memory to which processor is communicating directly is called primary memory, and the memory which is not being communicated directly, rather it is being communicated through secondary memory, through primary memory, then this kind of memory is called secondary memory. So the example for primary memory are RAM, random access memory, and another is also ROM. Relatively limited capacity. So the capacity of primary memories are generally limited, and they are also volatile. Like RAM is volatile, not ROM. RAM is volatile. Volatile means whenever there is no power, the data will be lost. So such kind of memory which are limited in capacity and generally volatile, they are termed as primary memory. So ROM is a primary memory which is not volatile, but limited in capacity. The term secondary memory, the example for this is the hard disk, the pen drive, CD-ROM which we use, where data is generally being stored permanently. We are storing data permanently. So if we are storing data permanently, then it will be treated as secondary storage. Generally, they have high capacity and non-volatile. Non-volatile means they are storing data for later use, that is permanently. They are not being flushed out when the power is off. The price of secondary memory or the cost of secondary memory is generally lower than the primary memory, and that's why we can cap it in high capacity while keeping the overall cost of computer system low. So we have already discussed that memory can be of two types, primary memory and secondary memory. Primary memory is of two types. One is ROM and RAM. ROM is random access, ROM is read only memory, and RAM is random access memory. RAM is generally used for holding the instructions of the program which we are executing on the system. ROM is generally used to hold the initial program of operating system. So whenever our system is off, so RAM is a kind of volatile memory. That means this memory will be flushed out whenever there is no power. So when we shut down our computer, we switch off the power, the content of RAM are flushed out. So they are not having any kind of data written in the RAM. And whenever we switch on the computer, if the data is not available in RAM and processor cannot directly communicate with the secondary memory, our operating system is stored in secondary memory, that is in hard disk. So that cannot be read directly by processor, and we are not having any instruction available in the RAM which will tell processor to read data from operating system. So for this purpose, to initiate the process of execution or the switching on the computer or switch on the operating system, we have some instructions stored in the ROM, that is BIOS, basic input output system, and it initiates the operating system which takes control after getting into the RAM. Different kind of ROM are programmable ROM, erasable programmable ROM, electrically erasable programmable ROM, and RAM types are static RAM and dynamic RAM. So we will discuss them in detail. So in case of random access memory, RAM comes in the form of these chips, VLSI chips. So these chips are having several ICs installed in this, and they are having millions of transistors and capacitors to hold the bits. Bit is the smallest unit for measuring memory. Like 1 bit, then 8 bits will become a byte, and then 1024 bytes will become 1 kilobytes, 1024 kilobytes will become 1 MB. So megabyte, then gigabyte, then terabyte, pentabyte, hexabyte. Lots of units are there, as like you can check. This time we are having hard disks 1 TB, 2 TB. So we reached up to terabytes. And the nature of this RAM is volatile. Volatile means it will lost its state when power is removed from the system. The state that is being stored in this transistor and capacitor is 0 or 1. So whenever there is no power, all will reset, all will become 0. It holds the data and application program where input devices or storage. So the program which is currently being executed will be held by the RAM. or we can say whenever we execute a program or whatever is running inside the computer is always available in the RAM. The types of RAM, the static random access memory and dynamic random access memory. The static random access memory is made up of semiconductors, whereas the dynamic random access memory, where each bit of memory is stored in the capacitors in an IC. So millions of capacitors are being used in ICs to hold MB or GB of data, but that kind of arrangement is become very costly. That's why DRAMs are limited in the size. In certainly sometimes in some MBs, or nowadays some GBs also. We generally use 6 GB, 8 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, 32 GB RAM. So not in TVs now. And this static RAM is made up of semiconductor memory. So it uses flip-flop to store each bit in memory. So it does not need to periodically refreshed, whereas in capacitor they leak charge, so they need to be periodically refreshed. Static RAM is faster and consumes low power, whereas dynamic RAM is slower in comparison to static RAM and takes more power because these capacitors needs to be refreshed very frequently. Static RAM becomes expensive due to use of flip-flops and its complex structure, so not in use in high capacity in the applications or in the system. These SRAMs are generally being used as cache memory in the computer system. So we will discuss the cache memory later on. Now come to ROM. ROMs are generally stored on the motherboard. They have been fixed. The BIOS of a motherboard has been fixed on the motherboard by the motherboard company, and generally it contains the data already whenever that motherboard is being used or being sold. So that data comes automatically. Generally we do not change that BIOS. Sometimes nowadays what is happening, the BIOS is also being updated by the company or the provider of that system. But initially when only PROM was there, then they were only programmed once. The content of which ROMs are fixed when the chip is manufactured, and it generally holds the bootstrap loader. Bootstrap loader means the initial function of operating system which loads the operating system into memory, which will take control of the computer later on. It retains its data when the computer is switched off, because it is non-volatile memory and it holds its data, so that BIOS is already written and remain there in the memory. So there are different types of ROM. Initially there were only programmable ROM. Programmable means it was empty of data. When the chip is manufactured, the data can be programmed by the user, or here user can be the provider also. The provider programmed that chip, and once programmed the data cannot be changed. So it will remain same. If you want to change your motherboard, you will get a new ROM or new motherboard itself. Later on, erasable programmable ROM like PROM, the chip can be removed from the computer and the program erased, and other program can be stored. But the process of storing that program was not easy. It uses ultraviolet light. So writing a small amount of data, it requires lots of effort. Next comes electrically erasable programmable ROM. So it's like EPROM, but rather than using ultraviolet, the electricity is used to erase and reprogram that. So that's why it becomes now possible to update the BIOS also. The SRAM which we were talking is used as cache memory. Cache memory is generally being used in between the RAM and the processor to speed up the process. It is faster and expensive than RAM. It is faster but also expensive. So we cannot replace the RAM with the cache memory. It will increase the cost exponentially. So, but it is used to improve the computer performance, and the processor can use it to store the frequently accessed data, that data which is being used multiple times or very frequently, that can be kept into the cache. So that data will not be searched in the RAM again and again. It will be available in the cache and processor will process it. Now different levels of cache is also there. One level is level 1 or primary cache. So this kind of cache memory is installed within the CPU. The CPU has its own part of cache memory along with the CPU registers. So such kind of cache is called level 1 cache. That means the nearest to the processor where data very small amount of data can be stored. Another is level 2, that is the secondary cache, which is on motherboard but in between the RAM and the processor. So processor is near to L2 cache and the data will be transferred from RAM to L2 and L2 to processor. The data which is being used frequently will be kept in level 2 cache. There may be other levels of cache also to make the system more and more efficient. Now next thing is secondary memory. Secondary memory, whenever we are talking, we sometimes treat it as storage also. Sometimes we call it storage. So secondary memory means we use a memory device for computing hardware that is being used to store, porting and extracting data files and objects. So this storage device is used to store what kind of data? Permanent storage. Permanent storage, and porting means we can easily carry it from one place to another place, and it is also easy to extract data files due to the efficient file system being used in these storage devices. It can hold the information or the data both temporarily and permanently, and it can be internal or external. Internal means the device being used inside the computer system, inside the device, that is sometimes the CPU box or sometimes our laptop. So when the device is already installed into that computer system, that is called internal memory, internal secondary memory. And the external device which is not attached to the computer system, rather whenever we require, we can attach that to system and use. So this is a storage device may also be known as storage medium. Storage medium means where data can be transferred through it, data can be stored to it. So the most popular storage devices for in today's scenario are pen drives, USB drives, internal or external hard disks, CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and we can also store data on cloud. So there are three kinds of storage. One is magnetic storage, optical storage and electronic storage. So the magnetic, let's start. These are basically the classification of memory based on their reading writing technology. When we are reading writing data using magnetic, then it's magnetic storage. Using infrared or optical rays, then optical storage. And if we are using the electronic circuits, ICs, for storing data, then it becomes electronic storage. So the magnetic storage, basically we save data onto disk or tape by magnetizing the particles available on that surface, and the information is recorded or retrieved by the by using magnetic read write heads. These are the read write head which will read the information onto the disk, and there will be a array of disk available inside it, and every disk is having one head attached to it. So information is retrieved using this electromechanical kind of device, where the mechanical device is also working. This disk rotates at a very high speed, and these heads read data from here to here. So different on different tracks. So such type of magnetic storage includes hard drives, which our systems have, some floppy drives, which is externally attachable small device, and we can also have a digital tape. So let's talk about the hard drive. Hard drive is basically a mass storage device which stores nowadays generally some TB of data, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and it is located inside the computer system, that inside the computer system unit. So this unit contains motherboard, processor, and attached hard disk. So it is used to store the application software and the data into the computer system. Its capacity can range from few hundred of GBs to few TBs. So most of the data is being stored in this hard disk. Operating system is also stored into this hard disk. How operating system or data is being read? Data will be transferred from this secondary storage or hard disk to the main memory, and then main memory will be read directly by processor. There may be some external hard disk also. This was the example of internal hard disk. Some external hard disk also, which we can use plug and play. So these kind of hardware drive has its own separate case and sits outside of your computer system, which you can attach anytime. So you can connect to your computer via USB cable. So they become more portable. We can carry them with us, and whenever we got a computer system, we can utilize the data inside this external hard disk, or we can have a backup inside these external hard disks. Magnetic tapes. Magnetic tapes are a device, something like in the previous era we were having audio cassettes. If some of you remember, there are some audio video cassettes which we can play for some audio video content, and there were a strip, magnetized strip, which were holding the data. So still they are being used in business to back up and archive large amount of data, to back up a data and keep it in repository. Like as of now, IBM and other companies provide tapes whose capacity up to some petabytes. So very large storage capacity magnetic tapes are available to hold the data as backup. Another type of storage is optical storage. So optical storage is different from magnetic. Magnetic storage was having some electromechanical concept and organization, whereas in case of optical storage, we have a low powered lasers to save the data onto the compact disk. So these compact disks are being exposed to this low powered lasers. That's why sometimes we say that we have burned the data onto these disks. The capacity of these CDs and DVDs are different. Like the CD is generally used to store music and some softwares or some documents. Initially, some CDs were read only. That means the data once written you cannot change that data. you got a pre-filled CD and you can only read, you read it, like if you purchase a album, music album, so you have got a pre-filled data into that CD and you can only plug and play that. You cannot change anything, you cannot write onto that. So generally they have 650 MB of data. DVDs are used to store videos, photos, and they allow better graphics and greater resolution photos because their capacity is more than 4.7 GB. So multiple CDs can be stored in one DVD. So there are multi-layer DVDs also available. Some Blu-ray DVDs are also available which can store up to 500 GB of data. So very high quality video or very high quality movie can be stored on these Blu-ray discs. CDs and DVDs can be read only, which we have already discussed. They can be worn to buns. Therefore, we can purchase the raw CD or DVD and we can write data once. That means we are having a facility of storing data only once. Next time you can read only, you cannot change the data. Some burn to many times until the CD is full. So another combination is you can store small amount of data until the CD is full. Once the CD is full, you cannot rewrite anything. Another is electronic storage. Electronic storage is basically uses the VLSI chips to electronically store or erase the data onto those chips. So like SD cards which we use in our camera and phones, flash drives, solid state drives, they all use electronically erasable or programmable data. They are faster because they do not contain any mechanical part. That's why they are faster than the normal hard disk. So one good example of electronic storage is flash drive, which is very popular among all of us now, because everybody who wants to have data generally keep one pen drive with them to store some kind of data which will remain along with them. So the portable storage device that uses electronic storage and has an integrated USB port onto it, that through which we can connect this to our laptop or computer system. So flash drives has many names, like we can say flash drive, we can say USB drive, we can say thumb drive, jump drive, pen drive. So these kind of names are popular for this. So they basically have one chip inside this cover, and that board is containing the electronic chips and some other electronic parts which used to hold the data onto that chip, and this kind of storage is permanent. We can erase data, we can change, but as any like it's not like if we removed it from the computer and the data will be lost. So not like that. It is very easy to transport data from school to work, from office to home, and the storage capacities are generally 1 to 2 up to 1 to 2 TB. Generally we have 128 GB, 64 GB pen drives we generally use. Another form of electronic storage is memory card. So the same kind of storage, but in more compact form. So this jacket or this jacket contains one board inside it which is having a IC to store data. These kind of cards are generally stored in our digital cameras, our mobile phones, to extend the memory capacity. They do not have any USB connected with that. These cards can be read using card reader, inbuilt or external card reader we can have. So these they are known as flash cards or SD card. Sometimes they are also called memory stick, and they are used to store data like photos in case of camera, some data, songs in the MP3 player, video game consoles also can have data. Even our cars can also have some data being used through these memory cards. So the storage capacity of these memory cards is also from 64 MB to 2 MB to TB. Another good example of electronic storage is solid state drive. Solid state drives are generally used to store huge amount of data, something like hard disk, but they are faster than the hard disk. So it is another form of flash memory which we are using in our pen drives. So the data which is stored via electronic semiconductors are built from solid materials. So there is no moving part or mechanical part inside these hard disk SSD drives. So these SSD drives reside inside the computer in place of local hard drive, or we can have a combination of both. They are faster than the normal hard drive because they do not have any mechanical part inside it, and the storage is handled by using flash memory chips. So they uses less power and more reliable than the hard drive, because just one difference is like they are not having any movable part or mechanical part. So you can ask me a question like why these SSDs are not used in all the PCs today. Nowadays, after I think from last 5 years, SSDs are more popular and being used in laptops, but previously these SSDs were not that much easily available because of their cost. The cost was way higher than the normal hard disk. So the computer becomes too much costlier if we do not require that kind of efficiency in our computer. Then there was no need to have these SSD drives. But nowadays, when their price has been dropped and they are easily available and the applications which we are using become heavier, so the use of SSD drives has been encouraged. So they cost 10 to 17 times more than the similar hard drive, like the Samsung T5 portable SSD 1 TB SSD was costing 32,790 in August 2018. But nowadays the price has been dropped. So now it is available from 6 to 8,000. So we can increase our storage capacity with high efficient kind of storage. So we can use SSD drives instead of normal hard drives, but still they are just double the cost of hard drives. Still they are just double the cost. So your computer cost will increase. What you can do, you can have a hybrid kind of system where the combination of SSD and hard drives to speed up your system can be utilized hand in hand. So we can have like some content over SSDs like operating system and some other content over the SSDs, and other content on or the content which is being used less we can cap that on a normal hard disk. So such kind of combination can be used to speed up our system. So that's all for today. Today we have covered the computer memory. So let's refresh it. The computer memory, which we can divide into classification: primary memory and secondary memory. Primary memory is the memory which can be directly communicatable with the processor. RAM and ROM are the example of primary memory. The secondary memory cannot be directly communicate with the processor. Rather, their data will be transferred to primary memory and then processor will process that data. but the storage capacity of this secondary storage is higher and they can store data permanently. So we use these secondary storage for permanently storing our data onto computer system. I hope you got sufficient information related to computer memory, which you can utilize in your working. Whenever you are working, you will be able to understand what kind of storage you are using and why these kind of storage are being used, what technology is behind these storage. So thank you all. Thank you.